July 4th, a night of celebration where the air is alive with crackling fireworks and joyful cheers. But in Clearwater, a close-knit lakeside town, the festive energy masked an unsettling truth. Amid the dazzling colors and booming echoes, something or someone was slipping away into the shadows. Sarah Whitmore, a cherished schoolteacher known for her radiant smile and unwavering kindness, was last seen amidst the holiday crowd. That evening, she joined her family and friends at Clearwater Lake, a spot she had visited countless times. The night was perfect. Fireworks illuminated the dark waters. Music played faintly in the background, and Sarah seemed happy, laughing, chatting, capturing moments on her phone. But as the grand finale lit up the sky, Sarah disappeared. No cries for help, no signs of struggle. Her belongings, a purse, a sweater, a drink, its ice slowly melting, were found abandoned on the picnic table. Her phone sat untouched, the screen still lit from the last photo she'd taken, frozen in time. The fireworks faded, the cheers subsided, and in the sudden quiet that followed, one question began to haunt everyone there. Where was Sarah? Search efforts began immediately. Friends called out her name, flashlights cut through the dark woods, and boats combed the lake. Yet, there was no trace of her, not a single clue. It was as if the earth had swallowed her whole. What happened to Sarah Whitmore under the glow of those fireworks? Was it an accident, a calculated act, or something far more terrifying? In this episode, we piece together the chilling details of her disappearance. A case that gripped a town in fear and disbelief. Through eyewitness accounts, unsettling evidence, and the cryptic behaviors of those closest to her, we'll uncover a truth no one could have imagined. Stay with us as we explore the dark corners of a seemingly innocent celebration and reveal the secrets that began to unravel that night. A night when the fireworks masked the start of a nightmare. July 4th. Across the nation, a day synonymous with celebration. Barbecues, laughter, and fireworks that light up the sky in brilliant, fleeting bursts of color. It's a day for communities to come together, for families to revel in joy. But for the quiet lakeside town of Clearwater, July 4th, 2012, would become a haunting reminder of how quickly everything can change. It was a night that started with jubilation and ended with a question that still lingers to this day. What happened to Sarah Whitmore? Sarah was no stranger to the people of Clearwater. At 32, she was the kind of person who left a lasting impression on everyone she met. Her students adored her, often describing her as the teacher who always went the extra mile. Her colleagues spoke of her as a beacon of positivity, the first to volunteer for after-school programs and the last to leave the classroom. She was, by all accounts, the kind of person who made others feel seen and valued. On that fateful evening, Sarah arrived at Clearwater Lake around 6:30 p.m. It was the town's annual 4th of July celebration, and the park was buzzing with excitement. Families unpacked coolers, children ran barefoot through the grass, and vendors lined the gravel path selling everything from cotton candy to glow sticks. The lake itself shimmered under the waning sunlight, a picturesque backdrop to the festivities. Sarah came with a small group of friends, her laughter and energy blending seamlessly into the festive atmosphere. Witnesses recall her taking photos with her phone, chatting with acquaintances she bumped into along the way, and even helping a child who had tripped near the concession stand. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the park grew crowded, with people jostling for the best spots to watch the fireworks. Sarah's group settled on a patch of grass near the water's edge, spreading out blankets and snacks. The air was thick with anticipation as the first fireworks soared into the sky, bursting into a cascade of red sparks that reflected off the lake's surface. Sarah stood at the edge of the group, her eyes fixed on the sky. A friend later described her expression as tranquil, almost lost in thought, a subtle but noticeable shift from her usual bubbly demeanor. But as the fireworks crescendoed into a dazzling finale, Sarah disappeared. At first, no one noticed. The crowd was too engrossed in the spectacle, their faces upturned, illuminated by the kaleidoscope of colors overhead. It wasn't until the finale ended and the crowd began to disperse that her absence became alarmingly clear. Her friends called out her name, assuming she had wandered off to grab a drink or use the restroom. When she didn't return after several minutes, concern began to set in. They searched the immediate area, retracing their steps to the food vendors and restrooms. But there was no sign of Sarah. Her belongings were still where she had left them. Her purse sat neatly on the blanket, her sweater folded beside it. Her phone, the screen dark, rested next to a plastic cup of lemonade. Its ice now melted in the humid summer air. It was as if she had simply evaporated. By the time her friends alerted the police, the festive atmosphere had soured into something altogether different. A mix of confusion, fear, and unease. Flashlights pierced the darkness as search parties combed through the park and surrounding woods. Boats scoured the lake, their beams skimming across the still water. But hours passed with no trace of Sarah. And then there were the whispers. Witnesses began recounting strange details. Small, seemingly insignificant moments that now carried an ominous weight. A man had been seen lingering near the picnic tables earlier in the evening, his face partially obscured by a baseball cap. A woman swore she had seen Sarah arguing with someone near the tree line, though she couldn't make out who it was. And then there was the cryptic message found later on Sarah's phone. A text sent to an unknown number just minutes before she disappeared. What happened to Sarah Whitmore that night? How does a woman vanish without a trace in a public place, surrounded by hundreds of people? Over the next hour, we will piece together the events of that evening, examining the fragments of evidence left behind, the testimonies of those who were there, and the chilling theories that have emerged in the years since. From the unsettling behavior of those closest to Sarah to the haunting discoveries made in the days that followed, this is a story that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about Clearwater's picture-perfect community. Stay with us as we explore the mystery of Sarah Whitmore's disappearance. A case that turned a night of celebration into a harrowing nightmare and left an entire town grappling with a terrifying truth. How safe are we, even in the most familiar of places? Sarah Whitmore's life seemed perfectly in place, her routines steady, her presence a comforting constant in Clearwater. But as we piece together the final days before her disappearance, the idyllic picture begins to crack. Beneath the surface, a quiet storm was gathering, one that no one saw coming, or perhaps one they refused to see. Sarah's days at Clearwater Elementary were busy, filled with the laughter of her third-grade students and the chaos of the end-of-term projects. Yet her colleagues began to notice changes in her demeanor. Miss Laura Grayson, Sarah's closest friend at the school, recalls the subtle signs: longer silences, a growing reluctance to join their usual after-school coffee chats. and moments where Sarah seemed almost startled by the simplest sounds, as though her mind were miles away. Then there were the phone calls. Laura remembered hearing Sarah's phone buzz during a lunch break. Sarah glanced at the screen and immediately turned it face down, her hands trembling ever so slightly. When Laura asked if everything was all right, Sarah offered only a faint smile and changed the subject. "It's nothing," she had said. But her voice betrayed her. Something was wrong. And then there was Michael, her fiancé. Clearwater knew them as the golden couple, high school sweethearts who had drifted apart and found their way back to each other. Their love story was one of second chances. But in the weeks leading up to the 4th of July, Michael began to notice Sarah pulling away. He spoke of the late nights, the conversations that felt one-sided, and her growing reluctance to discuss wedding plans. "She used to get so excited about the details," Michael said in an interview months later. "But suddenly, she didn't want to talk about the flowers, the venue, any of it. I thought maybe she was overwhelmed. I never imagined it was something else entirely." There was also the matter of Emily, Sarah's estranged sister. The Whitmore family had always been close-knit, but Emily had been the black sheep. After a falling out years ago, the sisters had stopped speaking entirely. It was only recently that Emily began reaching out. The messages started small, simple apologies, requests to meet for coffee, but quickly grew more desperate. In one voicemail, Emily said, "You don't understand, Sarah. I need to talk to you. It's important." Sarah, torn between hope and caution, confided in Laura but made no plans to respond. At the school, another figure loomed in the shadows. David Harris, the new science teacher. To the staff, he was polite, if a bit intense. To Sarah, he was something else entirely. David had taken an unusual interest in her, frequently seeking her out during breaks to ask about lesson plans or Clearwater's local history. One of their co-workers, who chose to remain anonymous, later recalled seeing David linger outside Sarah's classroom one afternoon, his gaze fixed on her through the glass. When Sarah noticed him, she flinched. A reaction that did not go unnoticed. It wasn't just that he was always around, Laura said later. It was the way he looked at her, like she was some sort of puzzle he wanted to solve. The day of the 4th of July celebration was one Clearwater had been preparing for weeks. The lakeside park was transformed into a hub of activity, with food trucks, carnival games, and rows of picnic tables set up along the shore. Families came in droves, spreading blankets on the grass and filling the air with laughter and chatter. Sarah arrived with Michael, her presence lighting up the event as it always did. Yet those who knew her best noticed the cracks in her cheerful facade. Her laughter seemed strained, her smiles fleeting. Laura, who spotted her near the food trucks, later remarked, "It was like she was trying to convince herself to enjoy the night." As the sun dipped below the horizon, the anticipation for the fireworks grew. The lake mirrored the fading light, its surface calm and undisturbed. Sarah, standing at the water's edge, was a picture of serenity, or so it seemed. Her phone, tucked into her purse, vibrated again. Another message from Emily? Or perhaps from the unknown number that had been contacting her with increasing frequency. Witnesses recall her glancing at the screen, her expression unreadable. The first fireworks burst overhead, casting the park in a kaleidoscope of colors. Children squealed with delight, couples held each other close, and Sarah stepped away from the crowd. Michael, distracted by a conversation with a friend, didn't notice her leave at first. By the time he turned around, Sarah was gone. When the fireworks finale lit up the sky in a brilliant display of golds and silvers, the crowd erupted in cheers. But for Sarah, somewhere in the darkness, there was only silence. When Sarah Whitmore disappeared, Clearwater's quiet charm gave way to panic and unease. The small town rallied, but beneath their collective determination lay a mounting fear. Someone among them might know more than they were letting on. The investigation began at the lakeside park, where her belongings, a delicate clutch, her phone, and a single earring, had been found scattered near the water's edge. To an untrained eye, it could have looked like an accident. Perhaps Sarah had slipped, or worse, walked into the lake in a moment of despair. But the authorities weren't convinced. Forensic specialists scoured the area under the harsh glare of portable floodlights. The scene was eerily quiet, save for the soft hum of the equipment. Nearby, the lake stretched out like a black mirror, its stillness betraying no secrets. Detectives turned first to the people closest to Sarah, beginning with Michael. Michael sat on a folding chair near the park's entrance, his face pale, his hands gripping his knees. "She was here 1 minute," he told officers, his voice shaking, "and the next, she wasn't." He explained that they had been watching the fireworks together until Sarah excused herself, saying she needed some air. Michael wasn't the only one who had seen her that evening. Witnesses reported seeing Sarah speaking with several people throughout the night. A local vendor claimed she had stopped by his lemonade stand, smiling as she handed over a crumpled bill. "She seemed fine," he said, "like any other person enjoying the night." But then came the more troubling accounts. A teenager, lingering near the edge of the crowd with his friends, told police he had seen Sarah arguing with a man near the lake just before the fireworks ended. He couldn't describe the man in detail. The flashes of color from the fireworks obscured his face. But he remembered the tension. "It wasn't loud," the boy said, "but you could tell they weren't just chatting." Investigators combed through hours of security footage from cameras placed throughout the park. At first, it seemed ordinary. Families walking hand in hand, couples sitting on blankets, children chasing each other under the fading light. But as they focused on Sarah's last confirmed movements, something stood out. At 9:47 p.m., just before the fireworks began, Sarah could be seen standing near the lake. A man approached her, his face partially obscured by the hood of his sweatshirt. The two appeared to exchange words. Sarah took a step back, her body language tense, but the man didn't leave. At 9:50 p.m., another firework exploded in the sky, momentarily illuminating the park in a flash of gold. In that brief instant, Sarah and the man were gone. Detectives now had a crucial lead. The unknown man. But who was he? They turned to the people in Sarah's life, starting with her estranged sister, Emily. The messages Emily had sent were retrieved from Sarah's phone. They painted a picture of desperation. Pleas for reconciliation, cryptic warnings, and one chilling message sent just hours before Sarah disappeared. "Please meet me. It's about him. You're not safe." When questioned, Emily admitted to being at the park that evening, but denied seeing Sarah. She claimed she had arrived late and left early, her guilt over their strained relationship too heavy to bear. But when pressed about the message, Emily grew evasive, her hands trembling as she lit a cigarette. "She wouldn't have listened to me," Emily said. "She never did." Then there was David Harris, the co-worker whose obsession with Sarah had not gone unnoticed. His alibi for the evening was shaky at best. He claimed he had been at home grading papers, but no one could verify his whereabouts. A search of his car revealed nothing incriminating, but his behavior during questioning raised red flags. "She was always so kind," David said, his voice low. "People don't appreciate kindness anymore." When asked if he had been at the park, he paused for an uncomfortably long moment before shaking his head. The investigation also unearthed another unsettling detail. Sarah had filed a police report 3 months earlier, citing an anonymous stalker. She had received threatening letters and noticed a car idling outside her house late at night. At the time, she had dismissed it as a prank, but now it seemed chillingly relevant. As the days turned into weeks, the search for Sarah intensified. Divers combed the lake, volunteers scoured the surrounding woods, and detectives followed every lead, no matter how tenuous. Yet, despite their efforts, no trace of Sarah was found. But then, a breakthrough. While reviewing the crowd footage yet again, investigators spotted something they had missed before. In the background of a clip showing the fireworks finale, a shadowy figure could be seen dragging something, or someone, into the woods. The angle was poor, the image grainy, but it was enough to reignite the case. Detectives rushed to the location, their flashlights cutting through the dense undergrowth. There, beneath a cluster of trees, they found something horrifying. A patch of disturbed earth and a single footprint pressed deep into the mud. As days turned into weeks, the pressure to solve Sarah Whitmore's disappearance mounted. The small town of Clearwater, once known for its peacefulness, was now gripped by fear and uncertainty. The search had reached a dead end, but just when it seemed the case might slip into obscurity, a breakthrough came. One that would send shockwaves through the entire community. It began with a tip. A single anonymous phone call to the sheriff's office. The caller, a woman, claimed to have seen something strange the night of Sarah's disappearance. She described a man, vaguely familiar, leaving the park just after the fireworks ended. Her description was blurry at first, but she mentioned something crucial: a distinct mark on his left hand, something that would set him apart from anyone else. Investigators cross-referenced the description with the known suspects. The breakthrough came when they realized that David Harris, Sarah's colleague, had a peculiar injury on his hand just days before the celebration. It was a burn, the kind one might get from working with hot equipment or machinery. But more importantly, it matched the mark the woman described. The pieces were beginning to align, but the investigation still lacked solid evidence. And then came the game-changer, DNA. A lab technician, reviewing the material collected from the disturbed patch of earth near the lake, found traces of blood. At first, it appeared to be animal blood, but a closer examination revealed something unexpected. It was human. DNA analysis confirmed the blood belonged to none other than Sarah Whitmore. The next step was to arrest David Harris. Officers moved quickly, apprehending him at his apartment late one evening. His reaction was cold, almost calculated. When questioned, he remained silent at first, his eyes darting around the room as though calculating his next move. And then, without warning, he spoke. "I didn't want to hurt her," David said. His voice was low and strained. But she was going to ruin everything. She was going to tell. The investigation into David Harris revealed a terrifying truth. David had been obsessed with Sarah for months. He had followed her, watched her every move. And when he realized she was growing increasingly distant, he began to plot. His motives were rooted in something deeper than simple attraction. David believed that Sarah knew a secret, one that threatened his carefully constructed life. David had been living a double life. While teaching at Clearwater Elementary, he had been hiding a dark past. Years earlier, he had been involved in a string of incidents: harassment, stalking, and even a previous assault case that had been quietly swept under the rug. Sarah, unknowingly, had been a part of his secret plan. Her refusal to engage with him romantically had sent him into a dangerous spiral, one that culminated in the tragic events of that night. On the night of the 4th of July, David had cornered Sarah near the lake. The confrontation, which had been seen in the background of the park's security footage, turned violent. His anger flared when Sarah threatened to expose him, to tell her colleagues about his past. In a moment of rage, he pushed her to the ground, knocking her unconscious. Fearing the worst, he dragged her deeper into the woods, where he buried her in a shallow grave. The trial that followed was a spectacle. David Harris's defense was as shocking as it was manipulative. His attorney argued that David had suffered from a mental breakdown, that his actions were the result of years of repressed trauma and obsession. They painted him as a victim of his own psyche, unable to control his impulses. But the prosecution was relentless. They presented evidence: DNA, witness testimonies, and the chilling confession from David himself. It was clear that he had planned Sarah's disappearance in cold blood, and his motives were as calculated as they were twisted. The jury deliberated for hours before reaching a unanimous verdict. David Harris was found guilty of kidnapping, assault, and murder. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But for Sarah's family and friends, the verdict did little to ease their pain. Sarah's life had been taken so abruptly, so violently, that no amount of justice could fill the void left in her absence. Yet even as the case was closed, lingering questions remained. Was everything truly resolved? Some believed there were gaps in the investigation, small, unexplained details that never fully made sense. Why had Sarah's phone been left behind at the scene? Why did David, in his confession, claim Sarah had known too much? What was the full extent of her knowledge? And then there was the matter of the anonymous tip. Some speculated that the caller was more than just a witness, that they knew more about David's past than they were willing to admit. Had there been others involved in Sarah's disappearance? People who had known about David's twisted obsession? As the years passed, the case faded from the headlines. But for those who had known Sarah Whitmore, the scars remained. They held on to the belief that the full truth had never truly surfaced, that even in the darkest of nights, some secrets still lingered just beyond reach. The case of Sarah Whitmore's disappearance was solved, but the scars it left on Clearwater will never heal. The quiet town, once a place of safe and simple lives, would never look the same. The discovery of Sarah's body and the arrest of David Harris brought closure to some, but for many, it only raised more questions. Questions that will never truly have answers. Sarah's family, her fiancé, her estranged sister, and the friends who had once looked up to her were left with the brutal truth that the person who had once been a friend, a co-worker, a trusted figure in their community was the one who had shattered their lives. It was a betrayal that would echo through their lives forever. But even after all the evidence, all the confessions, some believed that the full story would never come to light. Was David Harris truly acting alone? Or was there someone else, someone behind the scenes, pulling the strings? And what exactly did Sarah know that could have led to such a tragic end? The lake where Sarah's life was taken has since become a silent memorial, its waters holding the memory of a woman lost too soon. Yet, even in the quietest moments, one question lingers. Haunting, unsettling, impossible to ignore. Was this truly a random act of betrayal? Or was there more to the story than we'll ever know? As the sun sets on Clearwater, the truth remains just beyond reach. If you found this story as chilling as we did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to M17 True Crime Stories for more. And let us know your theories in the comments. Because, in a case like this, the answers may never be clear, but the mystery will stay with us forever. And stay tuned for our next story, where we'll explore another spine-chilling case, one that might make you question what's truly lurking in the shadows of your own town. You won't want to miss it.